Hi everybody, this is part 2 of the segment, I guess you would call it, on emotional blackmail. When we last left off in part 1, we talked about the traits that might make someone very susceptible to being emotionally blackmailed. And so now I wanted to move into what might be the personality of someone that is the perpetrator, the person that is committing the emotional blackmail. The people that end up, I guess you could say, being emotional blackmailers often do have a personality disorder, and it usually falls in either the narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. People with borderline personality disorder really, desperately need people to be with them and to have relationships with them. And if they feel like they're losing someone, they'll resort to things that will hopefully convince their person to stay, and that can include emotional blackmail. They're not necessarily deliberately trying to be manipulative, but because of their disorder, they can't deal with the fact that the relationship is falling apart. They can't deal with difficulties in relationships. Now, the narcissistic personality disorder, these people are deliberately manipulative. They take pleasure in causing others pain, the narcissist. And so they will use emotional blackmail as a way of making people feel bad and to gain control over them with quite conscious deliberation. And their victims will often continue to give in to their demands because it's so hard for them to understand how a narcissist could not have empathy for others. It just is something that their brains can't comprehend. And so they often just kind of turn their backs on the idea that this person would deliberately set out to cause harm to them. Common traits of the emotional blackmailer, and keep in mind that there is no prototype, are narcissistic tendencies, being self-centered, experiencing and expressing intense anger. They also might show deep panic, fear, depression, or rage. They have fear of abandonment, are emotionally immature in many cases, not in touch with their feelings. They don't take accountability, and they hate to lose at anything. When you think that you should be able to see things more clearly, please remember that your person that has been blackmailing you emotionally has done a very good job at making their demands seem reasonable, making you feel like you were being selfish, have maybe campaigned to make you think you're crazy, and sometimes has partnered up with other people that have influence over you to intimidate you. There are actually 4 types of blackmailing, and they all have variations of manipulation, of course, in them. There is the punisher, who needs to get their way and has no regard for the feelings or needs of the other person. They look at life as it's my way or the highway. Punishers will push for control to get what they want, and that could include threats to inflict damage or harm. Then there are these self-punishers, who make threats of harming themselves if their partner doesn't do what they want them to. The sufferer is the victim role, where the person lays guilt on their partner if they don't do what is demanded. And this goes along the lines of, after all I've done for you, you're going to let me suffer? And then there is the tantalizer, which can be one of the most confusing forms of manipulation because it's so subtle. There is a promise of what will be better if you comply. It sparks hope, and yet it's still connected to a threat because you do have to do what they've asked before you get what they have dangled in front of you as the carrot. When you take that time to step away and look more objectively, you may see the things you have been telling yourself that have been basically negative self-talk. For instance, it's not worth it to deal with their anger. Their needs matter more than mine. It's no big deal to give in. What I want isn't important enough. I'll just do it to get them to calm down. I would rather give in than hurt their feelings. I'm afraid if I say no. These are ways that you may have been justifying your compliance. But if you look again, you can see that it's all about their needs, what they want, and you're diminishing your own worth. You do deserve better. Please understand that you are not the problem here. If you have realized you are being manipulated, also realize that it's not your fault. You did nothing to cause this. It is the problems of the other person. Don't let that, however, lead you into sympathy so that you find yourself wanting to go back to giving in because you feel sorry that they have problems. We all have problems. We don't all choose to manipulate other people. Now, this flows into the fact that people that are victims of emotional blackmail often have been conditioned by this since the time they were small. It is unfortunately something that happens, that parents will emotionally blackmail their children. And because the children grow up having been used to this, they can fail to see the signs in their partner or their friend or their boss of being an abuser. They are used to being abused by the narcissist parent. It is because the victim is so deep in fog, remember, fear, obligation, guilt. They're easy to blackmail, so there's an even bigger target on their back. I've talked before about how we tend to repeat patterns, and I've also talked before about how children of narcissists often bring other narcissists into their world as friends or lovers because this is what they're used to. They're used to the treatment. They're used to allowing the treatment. They don't have a knowledge other than having been emotionally abused, starting from being a very small child. So if that is you, please know you are up against extremely bad odds of identifying someone that is going to emotionally blackmail you because their behaviors are quite familiar to you and have been for years. These are some ways that you can determine if you are being emotionally blackmailed. You'll often feel that something isn't right, but you won't know exactly what. And until you get around other people and observe other relationships to see that yours is not the same, is not harmonious, does not leave you with that same kind of contentedness, you may not even realize that your instincts that something isn't right are correct. Some telltale signs that you are a victim of emotional blackmail can include that you often find yourself trying to find a reason to say you're sorry for things, even though you're not even sure that you have something to say sorry for. In other words, you are so used to apologizing. You will often feel that you are responsible for your partner's feelings, and this is, of course, because they have laid that on you. Remember, we choose to feel how we choose to feel. You're not responsible for anyone else's feelings but your own. You're often scared of what kind of mood your person might be in now, and you try to anticipate their moods. You seem to be constantly making sacrifices for them, and you don't get the same in return. And lastly, they always seem to be in control. They may allow you to believe that you're in control until the point they lay you low and make it clear that they've been in control all along. There's a lot of game playing here. It's not easy to realize that this has all been intentionally planned to make you feel insecure so that you will comply. I know people don't like to think of their person as being capable of abuse, but remember, emotional blackmail is abuse. Now, if you have listened to part 1 and what has gone on so far in part 2, and you have realized that this is happening in your life, it's probably very hard to deal with. And part of that may be that your emotional blackmailer has done their best to confuse you so that you don't know how to deal with them and maybe with other parts of your life, but have no idea what to do about it. The first thing that you need to remember is that you can't change anyone else's behavior. The only thing you can do is change how you react to it. The best way to deal with emotional blackmail is to completely detach yourself from the blackmailer. Do whatever you need to do to remove yourself from the situation. That's going to be so hard to even contemplate when you are used to being so deep in fog, fear, obligation, guilt. You're probably going to need support from people you trust. Now, if your emotional blackmailing partner has done their bit to isolate you from people, you may be thinking that you don't have people you trust to turn to. You can go to a counselor or a therapist and ask for support from them. Leaving is exceptionally hard when this is what you have known. If you do have someone you trust, confide in them. Don't worry about being judged. Ask them to kind of help you see the situation through their eyes, because you have been so heavily involved in the situation that you might not be able to see your way out on your own. And once you have put some distance between yourself and the blackmailer, then you'll be able to make real decisions without the fog. If you do decide you need to talk to your partner, try to be as neutral as possible and keep the emotions kind of tamped down. You don't want to get involved in a heated emotional exchange. Use language that makes it clear that you are not taking responsibility for their feelings. So you could say something like, "I understand that you feel like that, and I'm sorry that you do." That way, you're not dismissing them totally, but you're also not taking responsibility for their choice to feel that way. The neutral kind of responses that will keep things from escalating emotionally, but that allow you to not be taking responsibility for the feelings of your person, can be things like, I can see that you're upset. I understand you're frustrated. I'm sorry you're angry. I can understand how you might see it that way. Let's talk about it when you feel calmer. If you decide to leave your partner that's been emotionally blackmailing you permanently, you do have to be aware that they may escalate their attempts to emotionally blackmail you as they realize that you are exiting your relationship with them. They have been counting on your compliance for a long time, and you leaving them will scare them. They'll feel threatened, and they may ramp up their efforts to keep you in whatever way they can. It may become necessary in that case for you to shut down any form of communication, including blocking them on social media. It might seem like you should know that you're being emotionally blackmailed, but you may not, because you're too close to the situation, and that makes it hard to recognize the warning signs. If you're still unsure if this is what is happening for you, these are some things that you can be on the lookout for. Do you apologize a lot? Do you feel like your person thinks everything you do is wrong and that you constantly have to beg them for forgiveness? Have you been taking responsibility for your partner's actions? If they throw a fit, do you automatically think it's because you did something wrong? Does it seem like you're the only one who gives in? Do you feel intimidated by your partner? Do you feel threatened into doing what they say you should? Do you feel like you're being forced to comply? Do you or have you made changes to your life just to make your partner happy, even at the expense of your own happiness? Is it hard for you to stand up for yourself in your relationship? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time and that there's no way you could talk about the things that are bothering you? Is it impossible for you to set boundaries in your relationship or to say no to your partner? And is it extremely difficult to communicate with your partner such that you believe that they are really hearing what you're saying? If you said yes to any of these questions, then it's very likely you are being emotionally blackmailed and you need to do something about it. These are some ideas for how you can handle this now that you are aware of what's been going on. The first thing you need to do is to be honest with yourself. Try very hard to look objectively at your partner's behavior. Start trying to pinpoint the things they do that smack of control. Another thing you can do is to write down what goes on each day with your person in a journal or a notebook. And that allows you to go back and look at what was said and done afterward. Because sometimes our memory plays tricks on us, and it is also easy for us to talk ourselves out of things when we have been left in such a state of confusion. You'll have a written record of what went on to review later to get a more clear picture when you're not right in the middle of it. It would be very beneficial for you to try to understand why you're allowing the kind of behavior that you are accepting from your partner. It might be time to look into your past to see why you think that you deserve to be treated this way. A therapist or a counselor can help you kind of dig deep enough to uncover why this has been okay with you. Now, you do have to determine if you're in danger. You know, people have emotional outbursts in life, but it's occasional. If this has become something that's regular in your relationship, you need to protect yourself and also your children if you have them. Try to get your partner to seek help if you feel that that's the right thing to do, if you feel they would be at all open to it. And if they refuse, then you need to seriously consider ending the relationship, because your situation will not change. Now, this is up to you if you think that this is something worth doing. By now, if you have taken that clear look to see what the behavior has been and have been able to step back far enough to look more objectively, you may come to the conclusion that there is no point. So again, this is a decision that's solely up to you. The safer thing to do may be to totally extricate yourself from the relationship without further confrontation. And if you need advice on that, again, counselor or therapist would be your best option for that advice. If you are in a situation now where you're being emotionally blackmailed and you're not ready to release yourself from the relationship, there are some things that you can try that may be useful. One thing is that when a demand is made, you take a long pause before you comply. You can take a break and think about how you're feeling about what's being demanded. If you create some distance from the emotion of the situation, you can make a healthier decision based on logic. If there is a demand for something, you can say you're taking it into consideration, that you need more time to think about it. Another suggestion is that you can choose a neutral statement when a demand is placed on you that can be as simple as "no, thank you," and keep responding in that way. That stops the back and forth kind of thing that gets you into the heated emotional exchanges where things escalate. One suggestion was that people that are victims don't need to wait until they feel strong. The advice was to do it, and then the feelings will catch up. People will often wait until they feel like they're strong enough, that they have enough courage, and then the time doesn't come. So the suggestion was to do it, and then you'll feel better. You can't wait until you feel better. You're going to have to make that happen. You can establish an SOS ahead of time so that when there is a demand that you don't want to accede to, you can put that into play. SOS can stand for stop. I need time to think about it. Observe. Look at your own reactions, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what has been triggered, and then strategize. Analyze what's being asked of you and the potential impact of complying, what the result is going to be for you if you do give in. Consider what you need and then explore alternatives. Please remember that no one deserves to be emotionally blackmailed. It is a horrible thing to manipulate another human being. You don't have to tolerate this. You do have the right to save yourself. You do have the right to be happy, because ultimately, in the end, being happy and at peace is really all that matters. Okay, I hope that there was some useful information in here. And if you are going through this, trust me, I have compassion for you. Sometimes it helps to know that other people care. I do care. Bye.